A giant red phone's called the Kremlin. That could be awfully useful, but giant red spots on your face, that's just an eyesore. Fortunately, today's video is sponsored by Geology, which is reinventing men's skincare. What does Geology do? Well, it creates a personalized skincare routine based on your skin type and provides you the products you need for a simple daily skincare routine. If you've got acne, sensitive skin, wrinkles, or dark eye circles, Geology is perfect for you. It's modern science with modern convenience. All you have to do is pop over to their website, take a quick 30-second diagnostic quiz. Geology uses the results to formulate a regimen designed to benefit your skin the most. For example, maybe you need something to crack down on those fine lines or balance out your oily skin. Well, Geology is on it. After your quiz results are in, Geology will send you a 30-day trial kit of its 4-piece product set, 2 bottles of everyday face wash, plus a morning face cream, a night cream, and an eye cream. If you like what you see, and you will, you can continue with a 90-day supply kit, or just buy a la carte as you wish. Geology has more than 3,000 5-star reviews, thanks in part to its great customer service and skin consultation. It really does work, so start looking younger and feeling fresher by investing in a good skin routine. Right now, you guys can head over to geology.com and take their free skincare quiz to save up to 40% on your 30-day trial, or just click the link below. It's a staple of many a Cold War thriller, as bomber aircraft scramble in the air, missile silo doors slide open, and the superpowers hurtle towards all-out nuclear war. The US president reaches for an object of last resort, the bright red telephone receiver on his desk. At the other end, the Soviet premier in Moscow, and perhaps a final chance to pull the world back from the brink of Armageddon. But how realistic is this scenario? Could the president ever actually pick up a dedicated phone and speak directly to the Kremlin? Well, yes, sort of, though not quite as commonly depicted. The need for a direct communications link between the US and USSR was recognized very early in the Cold War and was championed by voices as diverse as Harvard professor and defense advisor Thomas Schelling, Gerald C. Smith, head of the State Department Policy Planning Staff, the Soviet government itself in 1958, and Parade magazine editor Jessica Gorkin, who on numerous occasions badgered Richard Nixon, John F. Kennedy, and even Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev on the subject. However, various factions within the government and the military opposed the creation of a hotline on the grounds that it fostered too much cooperation and understanding with America's sworn enemy. This sentiment was perhaps most clearly expressed by the 1964 Republican election platform, which compared the creation of the hotline to Britain's policy of appeasement towards Adolf Hitler in the late 1930s. This administration has sought accommodations with communism without adequate safeguards and compensating gains for freedom. It has alienated proven allies by opening a hotline first with a sworn enemy rather than with a proven friend, and in general pursued a risky path such as began at Munich a quarter century ago. In the end, it was the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962 that would dramatically illustrate the urgent need for a direct communications link between the two governments. Lasting from the 16th to the 29th of October, the crisis was sparked by the discovery that the Soviets had deployed medium-range nuclear ballistic missiles in Cuba from where they could be launched against the mainland United States. US President John F. Kennedy immediately ordered a naval blockade of the islands, and the world teetered on the brink of nuclear war. In fact, if not for one Soviet man aboard one of their submarines, which we've covered in a video, the man who literally saved the world, it would have devolved to the point of no return. During the crisis, diplomatic communications between the two countries relied on commercial telegram services and were painfully slow, taking up to 12 hours to receive, decode, interpret, and reply to a single message. So primitive was this system that Anatoly Dobrynin, the Soviet ambassador to the United States, relied on a bicycle courier to carry his urgent messages to Moscow from the Soviet embassy to the closest Western Union office. This slow speed of communication contributed to the escalation in tensions, as in one case when Washington finished preparing a reply to one Soviet message only for another, more aggressive message to arrive. The situation got so bad that on the 27th of October, Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev decided to broadcast his reply via Radio Moscow rather than wait for it to pass through diplomatic channels. But finally, after 2 tense weeks, the Soviets agreed to withdraw their missiles from Cuba in exchange for the US removing its own missiles from Turkey. Wishing to avoid a repeat of the Cuban Missile Crisis, the United States and Soviet Union drew up the Memorandum of Understanding regarding the establishment of a direct communications line, which was signed on June 20th, 1963 in Geneva, Switzerland. The hotline, officially known as the Washington-Moscow Direct Communications Link, officially commenced operation in August of that year. But unlike its popular depiction in countless books and films, the Washington-Moscow hotline was never a red phone on the president's desk. In fact, the system was not based at the White House, but rather across the Potomac at the Pentagon, and initially consisted consisted of not a telephone, but 4 text-based teletype machines. Text communication was considered easier to encrypt and less vulnerable to misinterpretation than spoken words, and to further reduce the risk of miscommunication, messages were sent in English from Washington and Russian with Moscow, with translation taking place at the receiving end so that nuance would be preserved. Messages were encrypted using the Norwegian-built electronic teleprinter cryptographic regenerative repeater mixer 2, or ETCRRM2, which used an unbreakable one-time pad system wherein a different cipher key was used for every message. The paper tapes containing the cipher keys were dispatched to each country's embassies via diplomatic bag. The system took advantage of a recent development in telecommunications technology, TAT-1, the first transatlantic telephone cable, which had been laid in 1956. TAT-1 carried messages from Washington to London, from where they were routed through Copenhagen, Stockholm, and Helsinki, and finally to Moscow. For added redundancy, a secondary radio-based network was also established, which relied on messages between Washington and Moscow via Tangier in Morocco. At the Pentagon, the system was manned round the clock by teams working 8-hour shifts, headed by a commissioned officer fluent in Russian who acted as primary translator. The system was tested hourly by sending various check marks back and forth, with Washington sending messages on the even hours and Moscow on the odd hours. The first such message, sent from Washington to Moscow on August 30th, 1963, was the rather mundane "The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog's back, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. This contains all the letters and numerals in the Latin alphabet. The reply from Moscow was reportedly unintelligible, requiring adjustments to be made to the Soviet machines. Ever since, both sides have turned the test process into something of a friendly game, challenging each other by sending increasingly obscure messages, including excerpts from Shakespeare, Mark Twain, and Anton Chekhov, and even comic books and first aid manuals. However, these messages are carefully screened to ensure that they do not include cultural imagery or innuendo that could be misinterpreted. For example, passages from Winnie the Pooh are forbidden, as bears are a common symbol of Russia. This constant testing proved its worth on numerous occasions, as the cable was accidentally severed several times, including once by a Danish bulldozer operator and once by a Finnish farmer ploughing his field. Once a message was received, decrypted, and translated, the original Russian and translated messages would be transmitted either via teletype or in an emergency by telephone to the White House Situation Room duty officer, who would then brief the president. Indeed, contrary to its popular depiction in fiction, the hotline was specifically designed so that American and Soviet leaders would never speak directly. This was considered a stabilizing measure, as it required all messages to pass through several layers of diplomatic personnel before reaching either leader. This prevented their personalities and emotions from escalating tensions. President John F. Kennedy, who initiated the hotline's creation, did not live to use it himself. Instead, the first US president to use the hotline was Lyndon Johnson, who used it to contact Moscow following Kennedy's assassination on November 22, 1963. Its next major use would come on July 5, 1967, at the outbreak of the Six-Day War between Israel, Egypt, Jordan, and Syria. President Johnson used the hotline to assure Soviet Premier Alexei Kosygin that US forces were not involved in Israel's surprise attack against its neighbors. The hotline would be used again by Richard Nixon during the 1971 Indo-Pakistani War, 1973 Yom Kippur War, and the 1974 Turkish invasion of Cyprus, and Ronald Reagan during the 1979 Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, the Lebanese Civil War, Poland's fight for independence, and the Soviets' arrest of US journalists Nicholas Danilov on espionage charges in 1986. More recently, Barack Obama used the hotline to warn Russian President Vladimir Putin against interfering in the 2016 US presidential election. Throughout its existence, the hotline has been upgraded several times, though these improvements have not always kept pace with the very latest in technology. According to William Stevens, the Pentagon division chief who currently oversees the hotline, this is deliberate, for the goal of the modernization program has never been to be at the bleeding edge of the technology, but to provide a permanent, rapid, reliable, and private means by which the heads of the governments of the United States and Russian Federation may communicate directly. The first such upgrade took place on September 30th, 1971, when the transatlantic cable was replaced by 2 American Intelsat and 2 Russian Molniya 2 communication satellites. The system was further upgraded in 1978 with the addition of fax machines, which had completely supplanted old teletype machines by 1988. Finally, on January 1st, 2008, the fax machines were replaced by a secure fiber optic-based email system, and it is in this form that the hotline continues to operate to this day. So if the hotline was never a red phone on the president's president's desk, why does this image still persist in the public's imagination? Much of the blame can be laid at the feet of pop culture, especially books and films released prior to the creation of the real hotline. Particularly influential was Peter George's 1958 novel Red Alert, which formed the basis for the 1964 films Failsafe and Dr. Strangelove, both of which feature extensive scenes of the US president and Soviet premier speaking directly over the phone. Another possible influence is the 1966 to 1968 Batman TV show, in which Commissioner Gordon contacts Batman and Robin using a glowing red phone. And the image of the big red phone is such a powerful one that the US political establishment has long helped to perpetuate it. For example, a 1984 campaign ad for Democratic presidential nominee Walter Mondale featured an image of a red telephone with the narration, "The most awesome, powerful responsibility in the world lies in the hand that picks up this phone." The idea of an unsure, unsteady, untested hand is something to really think about. This is the issue of our times. On March the 20th, vote as if the future of the world is at stake. The Jimmy Carter Library and Museum in Atlanta, Georgia even features a dial-less red telephone receiver whose label originally identified it as part of the Washington-Moscow hotline. It was not until March 2016, after numerous visitors pointed out the error, that the label was finally changed. But while the hotline has served the United States and Russia well for nearly 60 years, in our modern world of instant communication, the system is beginning to look like an outdated relic of the past. During a 2010 press conference with Russian President Dmitry Medvedev, President Obama even joked that Twitter had replaced the hotline and that we may be able to finally throw away those red phones that have been sitting around for so long. But many continue to insist that the old hotline still has vital diplomatic value, with former CIA Director Robert Gates stating that the line should remain in use as long as these two sides have submarines roaming the oceans and missiles pointed at each other. In a 2020 article in the Journal of Global Security Studies, Esther and Agnes Simon even argue that the hotline's symbolic status as a tool of crisis management serves to make its users more conciliatory and more likely to de-escalate any situation, stating, "Understanding the hotline as a swift communication tool offers an incomplete explanation of its use and contribution to crisis stability. After all, the superpowers' mutual ability to communicate does not, in itself, guarantee that they will send each other vital information, nor does it explain why either party would believe the information sent via the hotline. We argue that using the hotline can be interpreted as an attempt to change distrust-based role-taking to trust-based interaction, and the hotline is a shared symbol of trust or trustee role-taking. By using this private channel of communication, leaders make use of the hotline's function as a repository of trustworthiness and try to make trust the basis of their interactions. Thus, as archaic as it might seem, the vulnerable Washington-Moscow hotline remains a vital tool in maintaining peaceful relations between the two countries. For as former US Secretary of State Henry Kissinger once said, "The greatest danger of war seems to me not to be in the deliberate actions of wicked men, but in the inability of harassed men to manage events that have run away with them." So I really hope you found this video interesting. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button below. Don't forget to subscribe. Also, please do check out today's fantastic sponsor, Geology. Link below. And thank you for watching.